For weeks, this elephant refused to eat and cried daily at the zoo. Her caretakers were confused, unable to find any reason for this abrupt shift in her behavior. Then, a familiar figure was brought back to the zoo, and his arrival changed everything. What can we do to help her? This was the question that plagued the zookeepers every day for the past month. Daisy, the elephant, now seemed indifferent, barely aware of her surroundings. All signs indicated that her time might be running out. To them, Daisy wasn't just an elephant. She was the pride and joy of the wildlife park, and a strong favorite among many. Daisy was also someone that they saw as a friend. She had been brought into the park at a very young age, and most of the people there had seen her grow from a calf into what she was today. Daisy was usually jovial, and would sometimes play pranks on the staff to stop them from leaving her to attend to other animals. Elephants are complex and intelligent animals with rich emotional lives, and seeing her with so much joy and affection was something heartwarming to the affectionate zookeepers. But everything had changed. Most days, she refused to eat or drink anything, only taking a few bites after much coaxing. This was extremely unusual for an animal who had once eagerly devoured all her meals. The expression in her eyes often conveyed deep sadness and an overwhelming sense of loss. A couple of zookeepers had also caught her crying at unexpected times and were still trying to figure out what had happened. They had to do something, or else Daisy would eventually fall into a deep depression from which it would be almost impossible for anyone to pull her out. The repercussions would be dire. She might even decide to retreat into solitude and starve herself to death. The caretakers had accepted that they didn't have what it took to help her recover. In his desperation, the manager reached out to an old friend called Mike, asking for his help. Each day pushed her closer to the brink, and there was no one else he knew who was capable of giving Daisy the support she required. The friend agreed to come, and 2 days later he arrived at the zoo. He was a professional with experience dealing with wildlife, especially elephants. By the time he arrived, the situation had not changed one iota. Daisy remained motionless in her enclosure, listless, with no interest in food. "Daisy, it's me," Mike said softly as he cautiously stepped closer to her. "Why are you causing them so much trouble?" he asked again, his voice gentle. Daisy's ears suddenly twitched, and she quickly turned her head toward the familiar voice. Her prolonged fasting had left her frail, yet she managed to rise to her feet and slowly make her way toward him. This was the person she had been waiting for. As she walked towards him, Mike couldn't help but remember the first time he ever came in contact with Daisy. Daisy was 1 year old when she had been brought to the wildlife park. She was an orphan, and the loss of her mom at such a young age had made Daisy a bit shy and timid. She had no interest in bonding with any of her caretakers, and would often avoid the touch of humans, who she believed were responsible for her mother's disappearance. Just as she was trying to adjust to her new environment, the park decided to bring in a new helping hand. This was 24-year-old Mike. He had started as a volunteer, but he had no intention of staying in that role for long. Caring for animals was something Mike had always envisioned himself doing. Although he was enthusiastic about working with various species, Mike had a particular passion for wildlife conservation. He had always read and watched about the struggle to preserve these animals' continued existence in our ever-changing world. He wanted to fight for these animals who had no voice of their own, and wanted to make his mark in that space. Getting a chance to work as a volunteer in the wildlife park was a dream come true. This was his first job ever, and he hoped that soon he would prove himself as an asset, and perhaps get a full employment opportunity from the park. Soon after being welcomed aboard the team, Mike was assigned to work as an assistant under a caretaker. He was told about Daisy and how the park had struggled to get her to come out of her shell since she was brought there. Daisy's mother had been killed by poachers, and at such a young age, she had suffered from psychological trauma. As a result, the goal of their team was to help her feel safe in her new environment and get Daisy to trust the caretakers and bond with them. Her capacity to forge a meaningful bond with them was essential to prevent her from feeling isolated. However, Mike didn't fully grasp the magnitude of the challenge until he found himself standing face to face with Daisy. She would only respond to food offered by the caretaker and would retreat whenever anyone tried to touch her. Efforts to engage her in play were futile, as she would lie motionless on the floor, acting as though they no longer existed. When Mike attempted to approach her, she reacted negatively, viewing him as a stranger she had never encountered and trusting him even less than the others. Every day Mike arrived, he was faced with the same resistance, which only indicated how deep Daisy had been scarred from the loss of her mother. During his free time, Mike pored over books and asked for advice from some of the wildlife experts he had met before arriving at the park. While he couldn't force Daisy to accept him, Mike realized that he had to show her every day just how much he cared for her. 1 month after he had been introduced to the elephant, Mike and the caretaker arrived at the elephant enclosure carrying with them Daisy's meal. She ate and once again proceeded to lie down, waiting patiently for her caretakers to leave. Instead of walking away with the rest of the staff, Mike asked to stay behind. This was his last task for the day, and he wanted to spend a few extra minutes before he returned home. He was given permission to proceed and found a log to sit on. Like humans, elephants are empathetic creatures, capable of listening to and interpreting human voices. Mike intended to rely on Daisy's natural ability to sense emotions, to connect with her, and gently dismantle the barriers she had built around herself. He began to talk to her about his day and things that had happened around the wildlife park. There was no method to his madness, and he spoke about everything that crossed his mind. Mike noticed that Daisy's ears perked up when she heard his laughter, but apart from that, she gave no visible signs that she had heard him. After spending a little over 30 minutes talking, he said his goodbyes and headed home for the day. But this was going to be the first of many interactions. Once he was done for the day, he returned back to Daisy and would spend time with her before heading home. He always took on the task of bathing her, and turned it into a time where both of them could learn more about each other and build trust. Days turned into weeks, and soon Mike began to see the result of all his hard work. Sorry for the interruption. Before we continue with the story, I kindly ask you to like the video and subscribe to this channel. It is very important for us. Thank you very much. He noticed that Daisy had started to anticipate his visits at the end of each day, her ears perking up with excitement whenever he spoke. She would watch him attentively, showing a growing curiosity and engagement. Bath time had also become her favorite part of the day, a moment when she was most cooperative with her caretakers. One evening, Mike returned once more to the elephant enclosure. The day had been exhausting, and every part of him wanted to head back home immediately. But he and Daisy had already made this their ritual, and he had no intention of missing it. He planned to only stay for a few minutes and apologize when he had to leave. But when he arrived, he was greeted with an unexpected sight. For the first time, Daisy was standing on her feet. She was waiting for him when he entered, and as he sat down, she approached him cautiously and listened to him as he went on about his day and how surprised he was to see the changes in her. However, the time soon came for him to leave. But before he could turn around and walk away, Daisy wrapped her trunk around his arm and tugged at him. As he looked down at her, Mike couldn't help the big smile spreading across his face. Nearly 3 months had passed since he first met her, but this was the first time she had reached out to touch someone. Mike felt deeply humbled to realize that he was the first to earn her trust and affection. The exhaustion he carried faded into the background as he knelt down to gently pet her. This time, Daisy didn't pull away. Instead, she held onto his hand, reassured that he wasn't leaving her anymore. When Mike informed the manager and his supervisor what had happened, no one believed him until they saw it for themselves. As soon as he said her name, Daisy darted towards him. When he bent down to pet her, she nuzzled against him, expressing affection and genuine happiness that she hadn't shown in a long time. Seeing the growing bond between Mike and Daisy, the park decided to make him the primary caretaker of the young elephant, and assigned some assistants to help him. With Mike's help, Daisy became more cheerful and no longer resisted when the staff tried to pet her. She played around with them and would often use her trunk to restrict their movement, causing everyone to burst into laughter. However, despite how friendly she got with the other staff, she never fully warmed up to anyone other than Mike. For Daisy, he was her first friend, and someone who saved her when she was slowly retreating into solitude. The moments they spent alone together at the end of the day brought her so much joy. Mike's ability to bond with Daisy gained widespread recognition, and soon, wildlife parks and sanctuaries with challenging animals began reaching out to him for assistance. The attention was overwhelming, but he felt grateful for the chance to pursue a dream he had cherished for so long. In his free time, he provided consultations to other centers, delving deeper into techniques for improving animal behavior and fostering stronger connections between animals and their human caretakers. Despite his growing commitments, Mike remained dedicated to his position at the park. No matter how hectic his day was, he always made time for Daisy and worked to nurture her relationship with the other rescued elephants that had joined the park. As Daisy grew, Mike grew right along with her and remained by her side for 30 years. At 31 years old, almost everyone had forgotten the rocky past Daisy had. Her jovial nature and love for her caretakers, as well as visitors, made her the center of attraction in the park, and a huge source of happiness to many. Now that he was 53 years old, Mike had achieved more than he had expected, and was a part of key projects relating to wildlife preservation. Although he enjoyed his work, Mike was ready to retire from the park and travel abroad more often to continue helping and protecting wildlife all over the world. While he and Daisy had a strong bond, he also believed that his assistant could continue his work with her. When he made the decision to leave, Mike started reducing the amount of time he spent with her, hoping that would allow her to detach from him. The park was sad to see him go and tried to make him stay, but a month later, his resignation was accepted, and he was allowed to leave. Before leaving, he stepped into the enclosure to say goodbye. Daisy, thrilled to see him, seemed far more interested in playing with Mike than in paying attention to his words. Unable to capture her focus, he decided to play with her instead, savoring the moment. When it was time to go, he left quietly, hoping she wouldn't realize he was gone. But as Daisy wrapped her trunk around him, Mike realized how wrong he was. Losing familiar caretakers can cause elephants to become depressed and refuse to eat. Elephants also have incredible memories, and it is hard for them to forget someone who had taken care of them for so long. Mike felt sad that he had to put her through a difficult situation. Despite all his time with her, he had still failed to anticipate how she would react when he was gone. To Daisy, his absence had happened suddenly, and she couldn't process the fact that she might never see him again. She wrapped her trunk around him and refused to let go, drawing laughs from the staff. Daisy immediately cheered up, and even as she moved, she still kept her trunk around Mike to stop him from moving too far away from her. But thankfully, he had no plans of leaving until he knew that she was okay. When it was time to feed her, Mike took charge once again and also offered to bathe her. In her happiness, she would spray water out of her trunk, causing Mike to run away laughing. Throughout the day, he remained by her side until he returned home. With Mike's guidance, Daisy gradually regained her strength and spirit, and in recognition of his dedication, the park offered him the role of manager to encourage him to stay. The new position came with flexible hours, allowing Mike to remain close to Daisy and the other animals he had bonded with during his time as a caretaker. Mike accepted the offer, and although he was no longer directly responsible for Daisy's care and didn't see her every day, he continued to make time for her whenever he could. Soon, Daisy welcomed a calf of her own, and the first thing she did was introduce it to Mike. It was clear that the proud elephant mom not only wanted to show off her calf, but wanted it to develop a bond with the same person she had a strong connection with. No matter what happened, Daisy was never going to forget about the kindness and affection Mike had shown her when she needed it the most. She was confident in the fact that she had a best friend in him. Did you enjoy this story? If you were in Mike's shoes, would you have given up traveling the world to be with Daisy? Let us know in the comments below. If you like the story, subscribe to this channel and leave a like. Daisy now knew that she had found a friend for life. Thank you so much for listening. See you in the next video. Have a great day.